Hello everyone, it's so good to be here yet again. Last night I saw Megalopolis, the long-awaited film from Francis Ford Coppola, and it is also one of the most talked about films in 2024. So I imagine most people know, but in case you don't know, Francis Ford Coppola has a bit of a legendary status as a filmmaker, especially for his work in the 70s, such as the Godfather films and The Conversation, a film that I absolutely love, but not that many people talk about. And then of course, Apocalypse Now. So yes, those are quite the legendary status films, and they totally deserve it. But since his work in the 70s, his films never regained the same critical acclaim. And this is the first time in 13 years that he's put out a film, the last being a film called Twixt, which admittedly I didn't know anything about, but when I went to see the reviews, I saw it was totally lambasted critically. In any case, this is a film that, though it's come out today in 2024, has been in gestation for roughly 40 years now in the mind of Coppola. And not only that, but he sunk $120 million of his own cash to fund this film. From what I understand, he sold his own vineyard to get the capital for this film. Yeah, you gotta respect that he went balls to the walls with this film. But how is the end result? Honestly, it's a bit of a mixed bag. There's so many ideas thrown into this film, and I'll be honest, all the pieces don't really fit all that well together. The concept of this vision of America that is on the brink of collapse is an interesting idea, but the execution is so chaotic and all over the place, it literally feels like I'm at a circus, which admittedly is properly mirrored in this dystopian city of New Rome, as they call it. It totally reflects the hedonism and degeneracy of what I imagine the final chapters of the Roman Empire was like. And the way this film communicates the thematic ideas that are proposed here is through quite a lot of political speeches. And not only these speeches, but we're literally quoting Shakespeare over here. The to be or not to be speech is here. I could barely believe it, but there it is. And I'll be honest, I find that they're totally shoehorned in. And I get the idea, modern times, ancient problems, but the integration is so jarring. And it's not just that these are old words echoed in our modern era. Right now I'm thinking of a film like Sing Sing, which does have Shakespearean moments, but they're very elegantly woven into the fabric of its narrative vision. Very different film, obviously, but not only that, I find tonally as well, it's quite strange. Like, we have these very serious political and philosophical discourses, and within the same scene, we have some pretty potent splashes of hedonism, and I dare say comedy. I literally feel that most of the film I'm at the court of the jesters, which maybe it is the idea that Francis is going for here, but I don't think the execution is all that smooth. Though there is one part relatively early on in the film that I feel illustrates that quite effectively. More effectively than other scenes, I will say, is we have all these politicians giving their speeches on these very shaky scaffolds where beneath them there's this model city of New Rome. I think it was a very effective imagery that mirrors the narrative themes of the film. And speaking of imagery, I do think that the visual department of the film is one of the stronger parts. Truly, at times, the film can be mesmerizing, especially in these surreal, dreamlike sequences. There's one moment in particular that really stuck in my mind of this cloud in the shape of a hand that grabs this full moon. There's some very inspiring imagery here without question, but by that same token, there are so many moments that totally took me out of the experience because I could feel the green screen on the stage. There are so many moments where I felt like the actors weren't really properly integrated in the world. It felt like they were literally floating there, which maybe was kind of part of this surreal aspect of the film, but in any case, I'm really not convinced at all. But nonetheless, I still feel that the art direction is still one of the strongest aspects of the film. The cinematography, set decoration, props, and the costume design. You can tell that there was a lot of love and hard work put into the craft of the film. And finally, as I'm sure you've heard by now, there's quite the star-studded cast in this film, and the quality of their stage presence is equally all over the place. Some actors like Shia LaBeouf and Audrey Plaza get a lot of room to breathe and just go wild and have fun, but then there are so many other great actors that I feel have a more cosmetic presence rather than any dramatic substance whatsoever. Look no further than Dustin Hoffman, who himself is a great actor, but here he has basically zero impact. I think it would have completely removed them from the film. It would have changed absolutely nothing. And the same could be said for Jason Schwartzman's character. Once again, not hating on those actors. They're great in so many other films, but here they just have no room to shine. And a brief comment on the women in this film. The way I see it, there are three archetypes. There's the malevolent manipulator, there's the party hoe, which very bluntly shows the hedonism and degeneracy of this film, and then there's the third, which is the object of romantic desire. And unfortunately, I find that all three archetypes are kind of surface level. It's a bit of a disappointment on their execution, not gonna lie. And then there's Adam Driver, the protagonist of this film. Even the name of his character is Caesar Catalina, which That on its own is loaded, but I'm honestly totally confused on how I should feel about this character. There's just so much loaded into this one man. I mean, he's a genius architect, a scientist, philosopher, politician, an egomaniac, a bit of a hopeless romantic. There's even this one narrative arc at one point that's explored where he could potentially have been like the murder suspect of his wife that disappeared at one point. Yeah, that narrative arc just starts and just fizzles out into nothing. He also has a alcoholic, drug addict part of his character, which I'm also kind of confused about. It gives off this like Bruce Wayne vibe in a way, because the way I see it, it's a mask that he uses that will allow him to reach his true goal. And then, as if all that weren't enough, he's also a bit of a time warping magician. Yeah, as you can see, there's just way too much loaded into this one character. So as I said, this film is very much a mixed bag. I wouldn't say I hated this film experience. It was a total mess, granted, but it was never uninteresting. Once again, I appreciate risk takers, especially in this era of endless sequels and Hollywood remakes. But unfortunately, I think this is a case where Francis Ford Coppola got to fully realize his vision and just throw everything at the wall here, and unfortunately, a lot of it doesn't stick the landing. So I'd say this is at best a 5 out of 10 right now. I'm very open to revisiting this film several years down the line to see how it has aged, how I as well have grown in parallel, and also to just see where in the world we are at that point in time several years from now. Because once again, we live in very interesting times, and I do think that this film is kind of a bookmark of what this era is like in a way. It's a bit of a hot mess, but once again, kind of interesting too. There's a lot to reflect on here, love it or hate it. So with all that being said, wishing you and your loved ones nothing but the best. Take care and talk to you soon.